Now the session is being recorded. I now turn it over to Sandeepan, Director at the Foundation for Agrarian Studies, to introduce today's speakers and say a little bit about the foundation. Sandeepan, over to you.
Thank you, Utkarsh, and good afternoon or good morning, good evening, based on whichever part of the world today you are joining us from. On behalf of the Foundation for Agrarian Studies, I welcome you all to this 5th seminar of the 2nd series of Young Scholars online seminar series. And let me apologize because we are meeting after a few months, a break of few months, because of some unfavorable circumstances beyond our control. We could not conduct the seminars for last couple of months. But yes, we are back, and in the next 3 months, we would have very discussions on some very interesting topics, as usual, on the last Thursdays of every month of January, that is today, and then February and March. Now, as most of you are aware, and Utkarsh just said, that this is meant to be a platform for young scholars working in the field of agrarian studies and on socioeconomic life of rural areas, a platform where young scholars who are in the advanced stages of their PhD can present their work to a larger research group. And at the same time, the objective was to build a network of scholars who are interested on these problems around the globe. We started in 2022 as a small group, focusing only on scholars who are based out in India. But then in 2023, we in consultation with Professor Barbara, who has been the series chair for the first series as well as for this one, whom we are very thankful for. And in consultation with her, we decided that maybe we should try and expand this to for scholars in South Asia, and the effort yielded to some extent, and we had in this series scholars from Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and of course India. So let me thank Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung for their continued support in running this seminar series. Today is the 5th seminar of the series, and our speaker is Dr. Nageshwar Bansode, Assistant Professor in B.R. Ambedkar School of Economics. Nageshwar will be speaking about caste discrimination and economic outcomes. And this is a subject on which the foundation has been very consistently working, studying this question. And we also have a book, for those who don't know, a published book titled Dalit Households in Village Economies, which tried to contribute to the study of understanding economic deprivation and exclusion among Dalits in rural India. I'm also very happy to introduce our discussant, Dr. Shamsher Singh, Assistant Professor in Flame University, a long-term collaborator of the foundation, and who has been consistently working on issues around caste deprivation in India, in the Indian countryside. So before handing over to the chair, I may once again reiterate that FA Foundation invites young scholars and students who are working in the field of agrarian studies to come and work with us. We have a very unique database of primary data from 27 villages across 12 states of India. And in fact, some of these villages we have revisited. In 2023, we revisited 2 villages in Uttar Pradesh. So students and scholars who are interested in sort of looking at this unique database, they are most welcome. We can always try and collaborate. With that, let me call upon the chair to initiate and moderate the proceedings. And let me also request those in the audience to key in your comments and questions in the Zoom Q&A box or the chat box as and when you deem fit. With these words, Dr. Barbara.
Thank you very much, Sandeepan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Please go ahead.
It's a great pleasure to be back in the chair's chair, even if it's from Oxford, and to be linked in this way with the Foundation for Agrarian Studies and your important work. Before we start, the rules, which often are broken, are that the whole session lasts formally for an hour, but in fact for about 1.25 hours, that the speaker is invited to speak for about half an hour. The longer you speak, the less discussion you have. And that the discussant is invited to speak for 5 to 10 minutes. Depending on what happens, I may speak or I may speak at the end, but the rest of you are very welcome to put questions into the chat, which I will attempt to moderate. Now, the topic is caste discrimination in villages and economic outcomes. And I think both the speaker and the discussant have done a lot of work already on caste discrimination in access to public goods, infrastructure, utilities, basic amenities. And what we're going to do is take that foundation of work and now discuss how it may be applied to markets. So there is a world of difference between discrimination in terms of access to the state or to public goods and discrimination in the marketplace. So let us proceed, and let me invite Dr. Nageshwar Bansode to give his talk on economic outcomes. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Professor Barbara. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank you all for your time. I also thank FAS for this great opportunity to present my research work here.
The screen is fine. We can all see your PowerPoint.
It's not moving or something.
Please give us a minute. There is some glitch we are trying to rectify.
Can you see the share?
Yes, 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 Nagesh. Yes, please go ahead.
Not moving. It's not moving the screen actually. No, you don't have to move it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry, because the screen was not moving. So, thanks, Professor Barbara, and hello, everyone. I would like to thank you all for your time, and also thanks to FAS for this great opportunity to present my research work here. So, the caste discrimination pyramids the rural life of India even today, but very few scholars have studied what Sukhdev Thorat has termed discrimination in market space as opposed to civil and political discrimination or non-market space. This paper examines with quantitative and qualitative evidences the economic status of Dalit households in two Dalit majority villages of Marathwada. So most of the village studies focused on Dalit households and their socio-economic conditions in multi-caste villages. However, there is no studies that studied the Dalits in the Dalit only or Dalit majority villages in rural Maharashtra. So this study will discuss the caste discrimination and economic outcomes in two Dalit only villages in the Marathwada regions of Maharashtra. The importance of market and non-market discrimination, the forms of market and non-market discrimination are not adequately studied. Thorat rightly point out that market discrimination leads to failure of the market mechanism, and there is a need for a micro and a rigorous studies on market discrimination in rural India. In their book on Dalit household in village economies, Professor Ramchandra and Madhura Swaminathan in 2014 also noted that there are a few studies by economists of market and non-market forms of discrimination and socio-economic exclusion there is clearly a need for a rigorous micro studies of the access of the victims of sectional deprivation to land, employment, credit, and other inputs in the contemporary context. So, in the types and the forms of market discrimination in respect of economic outcomes, I used Professor V.K. Ramchandran's 2008 framework of three important forms of discrimination. That is a direct discrimination, indirect discrimination, which are differential discrimination, and cumulative disadvantage. So there are three major forms of caste discrimination, which first is the direct discrimination on account of caste that disadvantages a social group. For example, complete denial or unfair treatment in a private market transaction based on caste background. The second one is indirect or non-market discrimination on account of factors that disadvantage a social group. For example, exclusions from the subsidies or lack of access to bank credit. So third is the discrimination arise from the cumulative disadvantage, for example, on account of long-term factors such as the lack of access to land. So these three types of discrimination are interlinked and not always easy to separate. So for this study, we choose Marathwada region. So why Marathwada? Marathwada is chosen for the study because the region has been less studied for agrarian literature, and second, the region has a history of agrarian struggles, particularly land and livelihood, and the region also the region is backward, has declared by the state government, and the region has a legacy of Namantar Andolan, which name change movement and land movement in 1970. So the region has a higher proportion of concentration, higher population concentration from the SC household compared to any other part of Maharashtra. And there are some literature which we found. So based on the primary data set, Thorat found the discrimination in the market space, particularly purchasing seeds, fertilizers, and other inputs. The caste-based treatment is disadvantage to the Dalit farmers than non-Dalit farmers. And this was a three-village study from the three different states in rural India, including Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Orissa. And another study by Ramchandra and Madhura on Andhra village, which found that the Dalits paid extra rent to upper caste landlord. Similarly, Kumar 2013 has found discrimination in the public credit system, even that is more in the cooperative bank, and there is a higher rate for the lower caste borrowers than a higher caste. Even Thangarajan, Professor Thangarajan in 2022 writes that the inequality in distribution of land and the concentration of land with the upper caste is the basis for a social operation and economic exploitation. Caste discrimination and caste-based exclusion from the market and non-market institutions in multi-caste villages has been studied to some extent. However, there is no systematic study of forms of discrimination in Dalit-only villages. To understand their condition, I have selected two Dalit-only villages. So, in that, from a list of villages in Nanded district with a Dalit majority, I selected two villages, namely Bachuti camp from the Bhokar Tahsil and Shindan from the Hadgaon Tahsil of Nanded district. First, completed a house listing schedule. Then, using a simple random method, I sampled 30 households from each village, and field work conducted during December 2019 to February 2020. House listing which showed that the Bachuti camp had 101 households and 400 persons. The Shendan had 126 household and 447 people. So subcaste of the Bachuti camp is a Mang, and Shendan, it is a Mahar Buddhist. Both villages are different in the nature of land ownership. Bachuti camp is resettled on Gairan or forest land, and in the Shindan, Dalits own and uproot a small extent of land. So the major findings from Bachuti camp, the Gairan can be called a grazing land, is a part of the every village's common property resources. And the Gairan became a central question in Marathwada after 1943 under the Dada Saheb Gaikwad by Scheduled Caste Federation with the demand slogan Kasil Tachi Zamin, Nasil Tachi Kai. So land to the tillers, but what about the landless? So Bachoti camp is a newly formed village including Dalit persons who were displaced from the original village Bachoti of Kandar of Nanded district and resettled on Gairan near to Wagad village, Bhokar Tahsil of Nanded, Maharashtra in 1972. So there are three important questions. First, many households are still struggling to regularize Gairan land cultivated by them in the village, and Dalit households occupied Gairan land, and this later regularized from the state, but they have not recognized as a farmers. The secondly, the Gairan land encroachment was first regularized under the government resolution GR 1972. No further regularizations have been made. The title owners also continues to protest as they do not have they do not have full ownership rights over the land. So thirdly, the two classes of landowners and occupants are treated differently by the state government. The class one, which we called crop or agriculture landowner occupant, has access to government schemes and subsidies, where the class two, which Gairan or grazing land occupants, are unable to get the same. So the moreover, the class one can sell land without permission of the district magistrate, but the class two has to take a permission. So, and as a whole village occupied a Gairan because excluded from the state's subsidies and the schemes. So the Bachoti camp is a village of near subsistence agriculture and with a low use of inputs, low productivity and limited sale of output. So the households have three main sources of income: self-employment in household industry, wage employment in crop production, and wage employment in non-agriculture tasks such as construction. And self-employment in household industry is income from making a polish leaf cups or plates. So the leaves are collected from the forest and made into plates or cups for transporting flowers. And for this, per 100 bundles, they get 25 rupees. So households were cultivating crops in Kharif only because of no irrigation in the village. Major crops were the sorghum, soybean, green gram, black gram, and pigeon pea. So the village economy generates a minimal employment days, that is 42 per workers, and workers, men and women, migrated for sugar cane harvesting to Western Maharashtra and Karnataka. So for a brick lane, they migrated to Hyderabad. So we estimated the monthly mean household income was 4,677 at 2019 and 20 prices. The SAS situation assessment survey estimates for Maharashtra was double the average mean household income of a household in Bachoti camp. So crop yields are lower than taluka and the state. Overall, the head count ratio is a 60% as per the Tendulkar definition. So the Shindan basically is a unique Dalit village, which is the second village. As most Dalit families own agricultural land and engage in crop production. Dalits of Shendan worked as a salgadi or long-term agricultural labor for the landlords of nearby Tamsa village, which is Nanded. After the Nizam state merged with India on 17 September 1948, the dominant Nizam landlords left Hyderabad and Nanded town, selling their land to Dalit workers. And there's a still landed section of Muslim households in nearby villages that lease out land to Dalit households. And Shendan is those a village where Dalits own and operate a crop land. So Shendan is characterized by small and marginal land holding. In Shendan, 47% households are landless and 53% households landed households, 53% landed households. So around 36% have marginal holding, and the 17% have small holding. So the average size of the land ownership is 1.3 acres. So the crop income, if you see in the Shendan crop are grown mainly Kharif. The main crops are soybean, sorghum, turmeric, cotton, tur, and wheat. And the crop yield of the major crop is less than the state and district average as we compared with the CSFE for the same year. This is the first scientific estimates for a crop income in Dalit village of Maharashtra. The annual gross value of output was 93,738 per household, and cost A2 was 51,441, and the net crop income was 42,297. So the crop income in Shendan for a year after the SAS was lower than the average crop income reported in SAS. So further, the gap between Maharashtra and Shendan in the crop GVO was 14,667. So the village had lower income per hectare than Maharashtra. So we compared the crop income with Maharashtra of the major crops such as cotton, soybean, wheat, and found a lower incomes. So 3 households were recording a negative crop income in the village. So the income from farming is not able to provide a minimal level of income, and we will discuss the role of discrimination in these outcomes later in terms of neglected by public policy, by agricultural extension, or by banks, etc. So even the days of employment in agriculture are limited, only a single crop and in the village, and no non-agricultural work is available in the village. There are no young Narega in the last 5 years, and households migrate to Telangana for chili and cotton harvesting, also for a non-agricultural labor in Pandharpur and Aurangabad. Mostly they are migrating. So the Shendan village poverty, if you see the village per capita income was rupees 1,729, and as per the Tendulkar line, around 47% households fell below poverty line. And this income is lower than the SAS estimation monthly income rupees 5,956 per month 2019 and 20. So the main source of household income is a primary sector, around 50% income received from the crop production in the village. So next I will discuss how economic discrimination was essential to the observed outcomes using the extensive information from the field level household survey and focus group discussion. We have found significant evidences of the 3 forms of discrimination. So in that the data was collected from the household, shop owners, market agents, and the local agricultural officers on the types of discrimination. And the table 1 shows the 3 types of discrimination in the different market space. There are some market space which are showing all 3 types of discrimination, such as a credit. And I'll discuss a few examples out of that. So here you can see land. So we have found 2 types of forms of discrimination in the land market. So the households which reported that as a Dalit village, we have been discriminated by exclusion from the state. How firstly they excluded us from the land ownership, still more than 70% demanding the right to land ownership from the 1970. So there are one woman which households reported even that the kasiltachi zamin nasiltachi kai, so land to tillers, but what about the landless, and why we can't take a gairan even from the government, and why we can't get the at least a gairan with the respect from the state. So the second evidence which indicates the cumulative disadvantage with the households were resettled in a new village but not given a land with the full titles. So this limits access to resources such as a credit. So there's another one about we also found the discrimination in hiring machine labor or tractor. So Shendan, which is recognized by the caste, not by the name. So it's a village from the nearest village. It's called as a Jaibin village. They're not called by the name. So we found that the upper caste tractors which refuse to come to the village for the work, and there are a few tractors owners that agree to come to the village, and that cost more, but Dalit cultivators have to hire them, affecting incomes. We have found a large gap in hiring cost of the tractor in Dalit only and multi-caste villages. Dalit farmers paid rupees 1,000 for hiring and bringing a tractor to his farm with many more conditions. The same tractor is a multi-caste village is charging rupees 800 to 850 for the same agricultural operation. So in a Shendan village, farmers could not get the tractor to hire in time because of that his sowing and other agricultural operations delayed, and it is reflecting on the crop yield. So in the credit also, we found a discrimination in the credit market, and as Thorat noted, public and private lenders either denied credit or charged a higher interest to the Dalits cultivators in the village. So first, discrimination occurred when Dalit households were charged a higher interest rate by upper caste moneylender, and the local debt contract called as a DD, where the person has to pay 150 rupees for 100 rupees loan. And this contract is a complex and has exploited Dalits for decades, as their income is less than even the interest payment. And next, we found the another form where the local SBI Boker branch manager denied agricultural credit to Gairan holders. Officially, they can get only up to the 1 lakh as a crop loan, and this is injustice to those larger Dalit Gairan cultivators. And then we found discrimination because the Gairan land is not classified as a class 1 land. Because of that, they cannot sell the land and even cannot use as a collateral in the market. So this leads to cumulative disadvantage, which is reflecting across the generation and across the spheres among the Dalits. So from the last 3-4 decades, they are not getting the credit from the bank because Gairan is not a collateral for a credit. And this is important to note that without the public credit support, how the Dalit farmers survive in agriculture. So with that, to conclude my field work into Dalit only villages of Marathwada shows that high proportion of household in the 2 villages have very limited employment option, low incomes and few assets. And this is so even among the Dalits household with access to land. In Bachote camp, households were resettled on Gairan land. This land gives a low return. Also, this land cannot be bought or sold and cannot be used as a collateral. So in Shendan village, for historical reasons, Dalit households gained access to land, but still have a poor economic outcomes and face various forms of discrimination. So with that, I'll stop here and yeah, so over to Barbara.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nageshwar. This is an original piece of research and its findings have huge implications. Before we open it to discussion, I'd like to turn to Dr. Shamsher Singh, who is the official discussant, for 5 to 10 minutes of reaction, comment, and questions to a wider audience. Can you unmute yourself and then over to you? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Barbara. Okay, Nagesh, this was a really interesting presentation, and thanks for taking us through your very elaborate and extensive study, which you conducted in these 2 villages of Marathwada. This has great significance, as Professor Barbara rightly pointed out in her introduction, and also in the brief comment after your presentation. So thank you and congratulations for this very interesting and important work which you have produced. We, those who have been working on in this field, and especially through village studies methodology, are familiar that there are studies which have talked about of caste-based discrimination in market economies, primarily in the towns and the non-agrarian domains. But your work, I'm sorry, there's a power cut here, so please bear with me for a few minutes until it comes back. So your work has significance in the discourses and in highlighting and underlining the issues related to caste-based discrimination in the agrarian and rural markets, which remains, as you pointed out in your initial slides, which remains a topic understudied. This contribution also especially becomes important that you have selected 2 Dalit only villages, as you very interestingly titled them. While we have some literature as produced by the studies from the FAS as well as other scholars who have carried out primary studies talking about the caste discrimination. There are also studies which have been conducted by anti-caste platforms and caste eradication committees and civil society organizations and mass organizations in several states, which has its mention in introduction of the book you talked about in the beginning, Dalit Households in Village Economies. So when there is information available and there is some literature available in public domain regarding the caste-based discrimination in the civic sphere primarily, and there is hardly any, these studies show that there's hardly any aspect of village life which is untouched by caste-based discrimination. There is a long list of discrimination or forms of discrimination which people encounter on day-to-day basis in the Indian villages, and it is very interesting that your work makes an important contribution in studying the market-based discrimination in the village and the agrarian economy, and going one step ahead in that direction by talking about only Dalit villages. Now, it also becomes significant in terms of methodology that some of us who have been arguing how talking about simple statistical outcomes and numbers is a half story, to the readers and to the audience. So methodologically, your study makes this even more critical, that using village studies methods, we know the story behind those numbers. We know the processes which determine those outcomes. Because if you just look at statistical data, which tells you and which gives you an idea of the picture in which these numbers exist, whether it be it with the per capita income or poverty proportions or household incomes, but if the processes and the factors and the regions and the conditions behind these outcomes are not explained, then the picture remains incomplete. So you with very interesting insights bring out from your fieldwork very detailed insights in explaining these outcomes and the processes which work behind these disabilities or the disabilities which are responsible for these kind of outcomes. So methodologically also your research has a more significance in village studies domain. Now there is something which takes me back to what Dr. Ambedkar has said, that the Indian village is a den of ignorance and localism. And it is a Hindu village. It's basically a Hindu religion village where the untouchables, the former untouchables now, as we use the term, are not part of the village society. And the ghettos, which remain predominantly, on the outskirts of the village geographies, continue to be habited by the Dalit population. So in your study, you even gives it an interesting perspective about not only this stands true in today's 21st rural India, that Dalits continue to live in dilapidated and dismal conditions in multi-caste villages, but when in Dalit only villages also, the discrimination is something which does not go away, and a systematic tool, which in this case seems to be the case, that state becomes a discriminatory agency and an instrument to discriminate against Dalit population, makes a significant argument about the bureaucracy or the state which exists, which functions on the casteist ideology and casteist practice. And there is something which there are certain questions which I would like you to kindly respond, and if possible, clarify to me and to the audience, if I can speak on their behalf. So while you have pointed out the social composition of these two villages, it is kind of unclear to me that one of the villages, the second village is Sandan village. You mentioned the land is, there is 53% households who own land, and then the rest of the land is owned by other caste Hindus. So are they part of the same village, or like how do the Muslims and other castes which you have mentioned, Marathas and others, are part of this village? If they are, then how is this not a multi-caste village? Just perhaps maybe I wasn't unable to follow that. And the second point which I have for you is, in terms of clarification, is that you mentioned the first village which is settled on, which has been is a village which was displaced and is now settled on Gairan village. Was that, if you can talk about a little bit about that displacement, whether it was a part of a land struggle, as your introductory slides point out, that Marathwada has been a region of intense land struggles by Dalit populations. So whether this displacement and settling of this village residents, Dalit residents on the Gairan village, was a result of a land struggle. And where do the existing land struggle or mobilizations in this region stand? Do they still have some presence? Do they still have some kind of intervention in the local political sphere? Also, that the framework which you talk about in terms of direct, indirect, and cumulative expression, cumulative discrimination, is also something perhaps you would be interested in looking at, a framework which is a social exclusion framework, primarily worked by Aryan Dehan, and which talks about how there are more than one factors in terms of outcomes. So caste being one factor, then there are certain other factors which come in, class, other identities, and locations, which makes it a complex web of processes and factors which play out, and there is never one single factor which is responsible for these outcomes when it comes to discrimination. And of course, Amartya Sen also talks about direct, indirect discrimination, especially in terms of the state as an entity, how state can function on the basis of discriminating directly and indirectly with certain sections in the society of population. There is one last clarification which I have for you. You showed a table in which you show direct, indirect, and cumulative discrimination, which is relevant for a number of factors when it comes to accessing either credit or land, or hiring services such as tractors, labor, input dealer, or even when it comes to selling their agri produce, or while it comes to accessing extension services. So how did you in your field work discuss this this question, or how did you address this question, whether you had all households experiencing this and then it applies, or whether any household in the village experiencing any form of direct or indirect or cumulative discrimination? So methodologically, or in terms of analytically, how did you make, how did you deal with these observations, whether they were applicable to all households or these were instances where different households felt different kinds of discrimination. I would like to stop here in the interest of time and to allow also other comments and other questions. But thank you once again for this very interesting and important work and presentation. And also thanks to FAS for bringing us here and giving this opportunity to discuss your work. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Shamsher. I think the best thing, there are questions building up in the chat as well. That was a very full and interesting set of discussants' comments, but I think we might pause and let Dr. Nageshwar respond. There was one about the caste composition of the second village, Shamsher village. No, I've got the village name, S village, I've put in my notes. And there was another practical question, an empirical question about displacement in BK village, the first village. And then there are questions also being picked up in the chat, to which I would also like to add a little bit. So could you answer the empirical questions first? And then I would like to repeat the questions about analytical and methodological problems and add my own little bit to it for you to answer, and then we'll throw it open to the chat. Okay?
Okay. Thank you very much, Barbara and Shamsher, for these questions. Basically, I'll reply for your four major questions. So first one about the Shendan village, as you mentioned that why you have saying about landless and landed household and who are the which caste or which class people own the land in the village, or are they staying in the village or out of the village or what. So about that question, basically in the Shendan there are 100% households belong from the Dalits only. They are staying, and as we mentioned in my slides, so there is around 47% are landed and 53% are landless household. So in that way, if you see even the landed household within that 47%, you can find that there are actually that is 47% are landless and 53% are landed household. So in that 53%, as I said, the characterization of the village, the land ownership, basically the small and marginal holding belong from Dalits. So there is a marginal holding 36% and 70% are small holding. So which nearest villages near to the Shendan, there is we called Jamla village, then Ravangao, then Dhakachiwadi. So these 3-4 villages are there. So they are basically multi-caste villages, and there's some landlords which belong from the Maratha, Jain, and Hatkar. So they part of OBC and even the upper caste. So they have owned the land, and they actually lease the land to Dalits. So not much, but there are some households, like some landlords are there which own the land in Shendan, but they are not staying in the village. They are outside the village. Even there are some Muslim landed households which are staying in the town or even the Hyderabad, where they are leasing land to the Dalits. So that is a story. And the second question about the second village, about the Bajoti camp, which I was saying about the displacement. So basically, the village, it has come through the struggles, like we can say about the 1960, 70, 80. If you see these 3 periods, so where the Gairan land movement started. So the central question of Gairan came in the picture in 1943, when Ambedkar declared that you have to own the wasteland or grazing land or forest land to cultivation, right? And even if you see after that time, the politically, if you see the Scheduled Caste Federation and the whole movement, where under Dada Saheb Gaikwad, who was the main face of that movement with the Gairan land, which has started in Marathwada, And that way he has led that movement to own the land, whatever the west or the Gairan land is there. So to own the land and cultivate that land. So that's come through the movement. And if you see in the similar period, 1960 or 62, in the previous village where Dalits were staying, around 63, 64 households in the Bachuti village in Kandar Tehsil. And there one Manar Dam came in the picture, where they were constructing Manar Dam. And that under that Manar Dam, there were 14 villages come under that dam. And that way, the Dalits were staying, which we're saying about the multi-caste village. And within the multi-caste village, where Dalits are staying outside the village, because the village itself, there is a two villages. One is, you can say, as you're saying about the ghetto, but I'll say about that, it's a different, like you can say, that is a, we called in Marathi Upa village. That is a part of village, but it's totally excluded from the main amenities which concentrated in the village. And that way, that part actually went under the dam construction, the Mana Dam construction, and because of that, they displaced. And even the government, which they giving alternative, that was not sufficient to Dalits. It was not a different land. So there was some contribution, but that was whatever the things which the government was allowing. So that was not enough to them. So that way, they were trying to find the land where they can resettle. So for the resettlement from the state land did not get them. So that's why they're searching for the land, and to search, they approached in 2-3 another villages in the multi-caste village to get the land, but they denied. And in that period, 60 or 65, the land movement throughout from the Nanded, there are leaders from the Nanded, which 2-3 like Wagmare and others, so which they have supported, and they came to search that village through the one fair is there, which we call Malegaon Fair. And in that Malegaon fair, basically the low caste, which we call within Dalits, Matang and others, they used to visit in that fair. That was annually, and occasionally for that they used to come together, and throughout that they search that the one land is there where we can go and settle on the Wagat, near to Wagat village. And that way they went and encroached that land. And throughout that, even that after encroachment, they face a discrimination in access to amenities, access to the basic other things. Even the Wagat village, which was multi-caste, so they are not allowed even water and other things. And that way it was difficult for them. So, that way it was difficult for them. But even they have settled throughout that what we call the movement perspective was important. And then the third one, which about the framework, about the framework, like community disadvantage.
Could I interrupt just now? And
yeah,
and thank you for that. And repeat the question with my own additions, because I would like also to intervene. The first part of the question was to justify the 3 definitions of discrimination. And the way Dr. Shamsher posed it was, why didn't you use social exclusion? Yes. So why did you eliminate other approaches to the study of discrimination? And then the question that I wanted to add my voice to was, how did you distinguish analytically and then in terms of practical field method, the 3 kinds of discrimination? So you've got direct discrimination, which might be practiced in the market, but your indirect discrimination through groups, the kinds of examples you used were always to do with the state. In other words, it was political rather than economic, if you can distinguish the 2. And then the third, cumulative, which you talk about in relation to grazing and Gairan, is a long-term factor. And I wondered how you actually define a long-term factor and how other approaches to discrimination like intersectionality contribute to cumulative discrimination. So there's a lot to think about in terms of theoretically and also practically in your framework. And then we have market, the questions about how that framework is to be applied to the market as opposed to non-market discrimination, of which there's a lot of evidence, as you said. Could you respond?
Yeah.
Sorry, we were interrupted by a whiteboard, but I think it's disappeared.
No, yeah, something suddenly came here. So
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, can I
So
reply
there
now?
yes, please do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So actually, about the discrimination, which we use the forms, the framework for to understand the forms of discrimination. So basically, as I earlier also mentioned in my slide, so these three types of discrimination are interlinked and not always easy to separate. So
Yeah.
that is very important, where we're saying about the direct form or indirect form or the cumulative form. So as to understand that way, which I have given the table, so there are many factors which we found that which is direct discrimination, sometimes in indirect discrimination, or sometimes cumulative disadvantage. So cumulative in that context, we were saying about, if you see, I'm saying from the 1970, where the Dalits settled on that Gairan. So the state has not regularized them, and state is not considered them as a farmers, right? And as a farmers, they cannot get the subsidies by the state, and there are many different plans and the schemes from the state. So the why state is excluding them from these policies and programs? That is a very important question in the village, and they have recognized as officially as a village. They have given a name as a Bachoti camp, and after that, even they have a panchayat where they sharing the panchayat with another other Adivasi village, and that way the other things are there. But even if you see the differences, I don't want to compare, but there are some mobilities there in that village, but in the Bachoti that thing is not there. So that way we were trying to see that what other forms are there, and how these forms we can put it with that frame which Professor Ramchandra used, and that way we are trying to do that way. So that is my like what you call, we have done for that, right? And the another, I think which one question you asked me?
Professor Ram, do you want to come in?
Yeah, one sec.
No, do you want to come in, Ram? The floor is yours if you do.
Yeah, well, one sec. I can't. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh, you
Yes.
can. No, that's good. I'm in a train, so that it may be actually Thrissur in a train, so it may be too. What we did in
No,
that
it's
book
not
was
clear.
that was
Actually,
used in the
Ram,
No.
it's not clear. I think we'll just, if you could write it in the chat, then it will be clearer, but we can't hear you clearly. I'm sorry about this. I think we better abandon it, abandon your comment, and hope that you can make it in the chat. But there are 5 or 6 comments. Thank you very much for responding to the discussants' comments, Dr. Nageshwar. Shall we go on? Because there's 15 minutes more, and
Yes.
look at the comments from the audience. I'm trying to classify them into linked comments, so they won't be in the order that they're in the chat. Abhishek, there are some comments about livelihoods, okay? And this is interesting because so many studies of villages focus on land, and it's clear that the land is unviable for most households. So we must change our focus to other aspects of of rural economy. And Abhishek is asking about the role of grazing, about animal economy, which is alluded to in terms of grazing, but not in terms of contribution to household income. So he's saying, is grazing a solution to the livelihood problems in the village? And what about rations and anti-poverty schemes, which I think are outside the remit of this particular aspect of your research, but which you may know about? And Harshita is asking about diversification and whether diversification is, in a sense, the Dalit solution to de-agrarianization, or whether it's not, and whether they are Dalits in these two villages are trapped in the agrarian economy. So those are the first two that are related to do with livelihoods. Could you answer those, and then we'll go on to other questions? Over to you. Ram, could you possibly
Can that be
mute
heard now?
yourself? Hello? Well, can Nageshwar answer the questions that I've just asked, and then we'll come back to you. Over to you, Nageshwar.
Okay. Yeah, so thanks, Baba. So the first question about the landed Dalits, which we were saying, right? So yeah, so basically, see, when we selected these two villages, the idea is that only to understand when we're saying about as a Dalit are separated from the multi-caste village, and how they have struggled to get land and to resettle on one village, which one village is coming on that way. And the second village was historically reasons they are in that place or that land which they own and operate. So that two are different if you see with the ownership of land. And the first village, if you see the economic outcomes of that village, which was not what you call at that level, which we found that there is a more poverty in the both villages. If you see the economic outcomes of the both village, even they landed household in the Bachut, if you see, and even the Shendan also is coming the same things. So that way here a very important thing is that the context of the discrimination is very important. The state policy is very important. The agriculture extension is very important, and that we can understand that how we can think about to solve this question with even the owning of the land. So that is one. And the second, which about the grazing, which is like it's really contributing to the what you call the household income. So if you see in the grazing also, like as a context, which I was saying the same thing, where the grazing land which they owned, and if you see the crop yield of most of the crops which they are cultivating, so that is very low, because that land only reserved for the grazing only. And that way even we have to I'll come on the same things which we are saying, that there is investment is needed, because the state support is very important to improvement. And that way we can see the some changes. But the important thing about the ownership, which whatever they occupied as a Gairan, so that has not solved, because the government has not given right to them as a ownership or that kind of. So that is one important thing. Coming to the diversification, which one question about the diversification. So if you see within the village, in the both villages which we are looking the whole economic aspects, so if you can see in the both village, they are predominantly working in the agriculture on the crop production on. And the second one in Bachuti, you can find mostly they are working as a household industry, which is contributing more. And within the Shendan, more than 50% contribution from the crop income. So that way, there's a not much diversification, and what I say for that, we need a investment, and the state policies are important into the both villages, and the perspective which we are saying about the how the forms of discrimination, that is also important to understand how those things are coming. Yeah.
Thank you. Before I go on to the second group of questions in the chat, Professor Ram, are you there, and do you have a better connection to make your comments about discrimination?
He's not here, Barbara. I can see him.
Okay. He's gone. I'm sorry about that.
Looks like that, yes.
But conversations on trains are difficult things. Okay, let's go on to the second set of comments. From Dr. Muturaja, who asks about whether you identified, and if you did identify, gendered caste discrimination. It's in the chat, it's genderic, and I've interpreted it as gendered rather than generic. But if it is gender and caste, does the discrimination work in different ways according to the gender? And then Navin Kumar from JNU is asking about a related question about the social structure of Dalit economy and politics, particularly the way in which the presence of Dalits affects rural institutions like co-ops or producer organizations. You already started to talk about the panchayat. So there are questions about the wider aspects of rural society and how being Dalit affects that. Over to you.
Okay. So basically about the caste discrimination and gender discrimination, I have not much discussed about the gender, but within the village, if you see what I have seen in my both villages also, as if you see the occupation pattern of the both villages, so they are working in the agriculture, they are engaged in the crop production, and even they are migrating for the sugarcane cultivation, harvesting to from the Bachoti camp, and with the Shindan also predominantly they are working in the agriculture only. But we can see the differences in within the agriculture agriculture operations. So if you see the agriculture operations in the other villages where from the Shindan, if the women are working to other village, the multi-caste village, but they hire only for the particular agriculture operation. You can say about the sowing and even only the weeding operation, and where the wages also where they're getting the less compared to the male, the most of the agriculture operation in the other village, the nearest villages. And even you can see in the Bachoti camp, most of the workers, like the women are working nearest village called the Bhosi. So they are working. So the thing is that the gender discrimination, if you see at the village level in the both village, you can find how they are getting a different wages, the earning also, and even the occupation wise also. So yeah, that is one thing. And the second one question about, I think it's panchayat and local institutions.
Other institutions,
Okay.
PACs or cooperatives.
Okay.
What is the impact of being a Dalit village on other institutions on agrarian economy?
Yeah, okay. Actually, we have worked also on that actually to look at the primary agricultural credit societies and even some other market and other things, like how those facilities are there. So basically, in the Dalit village, they don't have such a credit primary agricultural credit societies within the village, both villages, and the outside village like Bhosi and other village which credit societies are there, but where they exclude the Dalits for different things, like if they're going for the credit and even for other things also. And that way which village is divided, the both villages are divided with the other village as a gram panchayat, so the panchayat. So that's why whatever state policies and other things also, so which has not shared properly to the Dalit village, which mostly by the other village is always dominating, even the policies and other things also. So that level things are there, and which we see in the amenities also, most of the Dalit villages where they are more proportion. So always those banking credit related amenities are lacking in those villages. So that is a thing actually. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Muttaraja, would you like, your hand is up. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah,
Supplementary?
thank you. Are you able to hear my voice, madam?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I must thank for a professional webinar and presentation. My question is very simple. You already mentioned in the name of discrimination, the worst affected community is SC women, particularly SC women in rural India. So whenever we are making a policy or program or any schemes, we always try to have a aim of solving the problems of the discriminate community, particularly SC and very particularly SC women, and more particularly SC women in rural India. That's a point I am here to make. Again, thank for professional presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Muttaraja. Dr. Nageshwar, do you want to respond? We now have Dr. Ramachandran back on our screens. Ram, do you want to make your comment about discrimination?
Let me try.
Actually, it's a terrible connection.
Let me just.
Ah.
Me still no, you can't. Right.
Actually, I think we're going to have to pass
Yeah,
on
we'll
this
have to. We'll
because
yes, and
it's
maybe
coming and going,
yeah.
and we can't understand what your point is.
Right. Let's.
If you could write it into the chat, that would help a lot.
It's. I'm still working it out. So perhaps.
Okay.
Perhaps in a later discussion.
Thank you. The next comment in the chat is from Gopi Shankar, which is basically about generalizability. How does this relate to other findings in Marathwada? How does it relate to India, findings in India? And a different question is about the role of non-agricultural jobs in household portfolios. But could I add to this question a little coda of my own? What were the hypotheses about Dalit-only villages, which is what you have chosen? You told us that there haven't been any research on this, and we can accept that completely. But did you have hypotheses about discrimination in Dalit-only villages before you went into the field? If the discrimination was coming from outside a Dalit-only village, then you needed in your research design to cope with relations outside the village. And you've already talked about landlords and marketplaces a long way away from these villages. But if the discrimination were inside the village, how did you theorize that? Did it occur to you that there might be hierarchies of status and of discrimination that led to some Dalits exploiting and discriminating against other Dalits? Or was that something the research excluded completely, that possibility? Anyway, the main question from Gopi Shankar is about these villages and how you generalize from these villages more widely.
Yeah, so about the village and the discrimination which you're saying about the hypothesis for this study. So basically, before going to the village to do the primary field survey, we have done the what you call the census analysis. We used the census data to understand the hypothesis that where the as a proportion of Dalits increase in the population, so what is happening with the access to basic amenities. And that way we are trying to understand the census, one part about the occupation and another part about the amenity. And throughout these two parts, we were trying to understand, is there any differences when we define the Dalit majority or Dalit populated villages versus the non-Dalit, or we can say the multi-caste village. And throughout that, we found that where we have done the analysis of 8,000 villages, and we found that there is a larger difference between the Dalit populated villages and non-Dalit populated, the multi-caste village, where the amenities more amenities concentrated in the multi-caste villages than the Dalit villages. And that way we were trying to understand this is how this happened. This picture was coming from the Marathwada region, from the 8 district. And throughout that, then we were trying to understand the most populated district, which are the most populated district from the Marathwada. So from that we selected even we selected the Marathwada as historical reason, and even the concentration of Dalits. If you see in Marathwada, there is a 60% population from the Dalits, and that is the highest compared to the other region of Maharashtra, or even Vidarbha also has a 50%, 9 point. So that way, and from that way we selected the district also, where the Nanded is one of the district which has a 20% Dalit population compared to the other six districts. And that way we select the Nanded. From the Nanded, we have selected 1,604 villages. We ranked the all villages with the share of SC population, and throughout that we selected the 2 villages, that is, one is Bachoti camp and one is a Shendan. And these are the villages which were coming at the bottom in each type of amenities. You can say education, you can say credit, bank and credit, you can say transport, you can say what you call the other amenities which are important, like the local market, library, right? So every whichever we categorize amenities, so in that amenities they were coming at the last, at the bottom. And that's why then we were trying to understand then how we can understand their household source of household income of these 2 villages and the other socio-economic factors. And that way we were trying to understand. So as a the secondary data set, we will say use the census. Throughout that we are finding one pattern which is coming out in the amenity. So similarly, what pattern is coming to the village when we going for the primary? And throughout that we found that in the primary also there are differences in the village compared to the other village, and economically also the outcomes which we were discussing. So that is also coming out, which is not at the level. And the another important thing which you said about the inside discrimination. So basically I said the both villages are one village, the Bachoti camp, which is the whole village belong from the one subcaste. Within the SC, there are in Maharashtra 60 castes are there, subcaste. So within that, Bachoti camp is a one that is a caste is a Mang, and the Shindan, which is all households belong from the only one caste, that is a Buddha. They call as a Mahar also. So that way, the both villages are different with the subcaste, but they are both Dalit villages. So the subcaste is different. So that's why it's not that level the hierarchy. Even if you see in the Shendan, which landed and non-landed household, like the landless household, in their socio-economic profile also, if you see, you won't find any much difference, right? Which has 4 acres or which one has there is no land. So the both actually are facing the similar type of exclusion, because from the state also, and even from the local the multi-caste villages also. So that is the thing actually. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we're running out of time. There was, can we have 1 or 2 more minutes? Sandeepan or Utkarsh?
Yeah.
Yes,
maybe.
Yes.
Last bit.
Because the questions are very interesting. There's one last question from Aijas, Is this the kind of topic that is a useful one for doctoral research? And what are future aspects that have emerged from your research that could be developed by doctoral students in the future?
Actually, this is an important research, what I can say. And yeah, because I was like, this one motivation which comes like to work on such a topic and such a area, that is my supervisor and the members. So that way it is good, because most of the studies which are focusing with one aspect, and that way we are trying to understand how the other aspects are there. And that is important. And even throughout the Ambedkar's writing also, these things are coming, how the second within village, how the Dalits are doing, and what will happen when they are moving from multi-caste to other village. So that is thing. And important is that caste is not a breaking where we are saying there when they are separating. So those things are there, still things are there. So that is very important. And that way you can understand the dynamics of the caste, like how it's working, how the mechanize, right? And that mechanization is extending those things, and which economically also was staying the Dalits depriving in many aspects. So that way it's interesting, or like they can work on that way. That is fine. Okay.
Thank you very much. This was an extremely rich discussion, because your work is so rich and it's making original contributions. So thank you both, Dr. Nageshwar and Dr. Shamsher. I take away that the state is very important for the economy, for market, particularly in the registration of title and the entitlements that land title or title to common property resources in some way confers on you. But also I take away that cumulative discrimination is a function of market discrimination, as well as lack of access to the state. And Dr. Ram has put into the chat both that as one of the purposes of looking at an all-Dalit village, and the background to the 3 types of discrimination. No, I'm afraid we still don't have Ram clearly. I'm so sorry about this, because I know that you would have wanted to clarify this, but the time is also getting on. I want to return to the foundation, but just to flag that the next topic will be on the 29th of February, and it's to do with contract agriculture and women. But thank both of you and all the people who contributed to the chat for engaging with this very important topic, and back to the Foundation for Agrarian Studies.
Thank you, Professor. I'll only take a couple of minutes to propose the vote of thanks. I would like to thank Dr. Nageshwar Bansode for his informative presentation. I hope the discussion was as enriching for him as it was for us. I thank today's discussant, Dr. Shamsher Singh, for his participation and valuable comments. We are also grateful to Professor Barbara Harris-White for chairing this session and her support in expanding the scope of this seminar series. I thank Rosa Luxemburg-Stiftung South Asia for their generous support in making this series possible. I'm also thankful to the online team at FAS, Deepak, Sandeepan, Tapas, and Setu for their role in conducting this seminar very smoothly. Last but not the least, we are grateful to all the attendees for participating and making this a lively discussion. As mentioned earlier, a recording of this session will be made available on YouTube in the coming weeks. I just want to announce that our next seminar will take place on February 29, 2023. Bisakha Devan from the University of Queensland, Australia, will be speaking about contract farming and women's empowerment through a study based on Bangladesh vegetable seed value chain. To know more about the foundation and the work we do, please visit our website, fas.org.in. We're also on social media platforms. You can find us through our handle FAS Agri Studies on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I request that you follow us on these platforms to not just get updates about this seminar series, but also about our other work. We'll share the handle in the chat box soon. We'll be ending the session with this once again. Thank you all. Thank you very much for your participation and the discussion. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.